Hey guys, so I'm here in the plaster room up at the art building, which is just if you enter the south door, immediately to your right or past the women's bathroom. It's the plaster room. You may recognize it by the dusty coat on everything in the room. So I have everything I need set up in front of me. I'm going to show you what those things are. Bucket. Again, I put some of these for you guys in the Sculpture 1 room. 4 of these, which are called coddles. You'll find those under all the tables in the plaster room. Make sure you find 4 that match in size. I have a scraper. I have Vaseline, which will serve as what's called a mold release, so our plaster doesn't get permanently stuck to anything. I have 4 C-clamps. Any kind of clamps will work. We keep a medley of clamps in the plaster room, however, they do walk off, so these 4 I know reliably are here and ready for you. A bag of wet water clay, malleable water clay. And I need one more thing that I've forgotten, which is a bottom board. And I keep these under the tables as well. This is just a thick piece of plexiglass. So the scraper, you can guess, is to just take any excess plaster off of the materials I'm going to use to make my mold. So I don't want any residual plaster at the seams that will hold my mold apart, plaster on the bottom that will hold it away from the table. Basically, I am making a container to fill with liquid plaster. And if I have gaps in my container, then I have spaces for leaking. So this has residual rubber, silicone rubber from another mold making process, and dry clay from a mold making process. That will become embedded in my plaster if I leave it on the walls of the mold. That's okay, not a big deal for what we're doing, but it's a good habit to get into. The last person who used these should have done this scraping themselves, but given that it is a shared environment, you can never guarantee that people will be respectful like that. So take a look at all your materials. I don't need to worry about the outsides of these. The outsides are the sides that the block is affixed to. Okay. So, my first step is going to be to determine the size of my mold box. That will be how big my block is in the end. My mic is down on the ground, so it's kind of odd. But coddles can be a little confusing. They're adjustable in scale up to a point, obviously up to their largest dimension, but they're also scalable downward. So I can clamp this block. The block is always on the outside of the mold. If it wasn't, imagine I pour plaster up against that shape, I end up with the negative of that shape, which is an indented corner. Whereas if I pour plaster in the negative of this shape, I get a sharp corner. That helps you remember. But there is a lot of brain befuddling that can happen, so don't be ashamed. Okay, so as you can see, I can clamp this all the way to the very exterior limit of the length of my coddle, but I can also clamp it right here and end up with a much smaller mold box. I'm going to do about there, maybe here, a cube. I've maybe gone with a little bit of a excessively long mold box here, but I want that height, and some of the other ones that are tall they tend to be long. So I'm going to clamp that down. What that'll look like is this. Okay, so I'm going to go around the form and build that shape the rest of the way. My next wall, I'm going to do this one so you can see it. You can see I'm staggering the blocks. So block here meant that I put the block here, right? So everywhere that there isn't a block on the original board, I'm going to try to say that another way. Basically, we never want these to be on the same side, because when it comes to clamp the next wall, we won't have anything to clamp to. So for every pair, there should be only one block. So again, I can kind of scale this for a larger or shorter block. I'm going to, again, kind of go with that cube shape. I want to bite off more than I can chew here. It's easier to close the C-clamp if this element is on the side of the broad board and not on the same side as the block, because I have a lot of resistance here. And this doesn't have to be like Hulk tight, just snug. It's only going to be resisting the weight of the plaster you pour in there. So again, if you can guess, say some Dora the Explorer, where does the block go? It's going to go against the side that doesn't already have a block, right? This side has a block, so I'll be using that to clamp here and this to clamp here. These are not perfectly square, and that's okay. What that means is that, well, basically, you'll see, for a number of reasons, the shape of the mold box is never our final sculpture. Where even if I wanted a perfect cube, this is not going to give me a perfect cube. This is going to give me a rough cube that I'm going to have to carve into a perfect cube. Okay, this looks a little long on this side to me. It looks a little rectangular, so I'm going to move this one. Just kind of scoot it along its length. Close up that dimension. Cube here. Okay, so if I were to go ahead and just pour very thin running plaster into this box, the plaster would most certainly find its way out the bottoms. So that is where the clay comes into play. I'm going to see if I can get this ridiculous apparatus closer. Okay, you see down into the box, kind of. Okay, that's not bad. So, again, one block per connection permitted me to do that. All the blocks are on the outside of the mold box, but it's just sitting there, right? And the clamping pressure is only at the top. So you can see here that that gap is a little wider at the bottom than it is at the top. You can imagine how hard it is to find a clamp deep enough to clamp down at the bottom. So instead of doing that, I don't even try. We use water clay, where's the camera? Water clay, to seal up the edges and to support the exteriors. Important note, water clay that has been in the plaster room never goes home to the ceramics area. Plaster contains so much moisture that in the kiln, as the temperature rises, the moisture in the plaster expands so rapidly that the plaster explodes. So if there's any plaster in the clay as you fire it, you are likely to break your work and break the work of another. So this is forever plaster room clay. So I'm just coming up the sides here, laying in a seam of clay into that corner. All I want is a seal. It doesn't need to be thick. But this is another reason why I'll never get a perfect cube out of my first cast, because I need to seal these edges. This will result in the negative of this, which will be kind of a rounded bullnose edge. So I'm going to do this all the way around and at the bottom. So I might edit from here. I feel fancy. Fast forward.